questions for you, okay? Like we explained to your dad and your sister, our goal here is to figure out what happened. Okay, strictly figure out what happened.
Some couples fall in love, others fall into something far more dangerous. When two people decide they're smarter than everyone else, smarter than witnesses, smarter than evidence, smarter than the law, the result is rarely romance. It's destruction, and almost always, it ends the same way. These are not crimes of impulse, they're crimes of confidence. Confidence that no one will connect the dots. Confidence that loyalty will outlast fear. Confidence that love will protect them from consequences. It never does. Time and again, couples who commit murder together believe they've built the perfect story, a clean alibi, a shared lie, a bond so strong it can't crack under pressure. But what they underestimate is something far more powerful than love or planning: human nature. Because when guilt sets in, when fear creeps closer, when the walls start closing, someone always slips. Someone talks, someone breaks. Tonight we're examining real cases where couples believed they could outsmart police and failed. Not because investigators were lucky, but because no relationship survives secrets soaked in blood. This is what happens when love turns lethal, and why getting away with it is an illusion. When couples commit murder together, the crime rarely starts with violence. It starts with belief. Belief that their love makes them smarter. Belief that together, they can control the story. Investigators see this pattern over and over again. Two people convince themselves that loyalty will outweigh fear, that rehearsed lies will survive scrutiny, and that silence will last forever. But murder doesn't strengthen relationships. It exposes every weakness hiding beneath them. One of the most common mistakes these couples make is assuming police are chasing them from the start. In reality, investigators usually begin with the simplest explanation until the cracks appear. And cracks always appear. In many cases, the first mistake happens within hours. A partner reports someone missing but sounds too calm or too emotional. Details don't line up. Timelines shift. Small contradictions creep in. Not because the story is complicated, but because it's fake. The human brain struggles to maintain lies under pressure, especially when those lies are shared. That's the first illusion killer couples believe, that two people telling the same lie makes it stronger. It doesn't. It makes it fragile. Police are trained to separate suspects, repeat questions, and wait. They don't rush. They let time do the work. Because when couples commit crimes together, time becomes their enemy. Fear grows unevenly. Guilt settles differently. One person starts losing sleep while the other tries to stay in control. And eventually, one of them starts to talk. In one case, a couple believed they had planned the perfect crime. The victim was someone close, someone whose disappearance wouldn't immediately raise alarms. They staged a scene, cleaned carefully, and rehearsed their statements. Friends described them as calm, cooperative, almost convincing. But what they didn't account for was routine. Police noticed that certain behaviors didn't change the way they should have. Phone activity continued in unnatural patterns. Financial transactions didn't stop when they logically should have. Someone who was supposedly gone was still digitally alive. When investigators confronted the couple separately, the cracks widened instantly. One partner stuck rigidly to the rehearsed story, too rigid. The other hesitated, corrected details, softened language. Those differences mattered. By the second interview, detectives didn't need evidence. They needed pressure. And pressure works differently on different people. One partner wanted reassurance. The other wanted control. That imbalance is fatal. Another case followed a similar pattern, but unraveled even faster. This couple believed they could hide behind grief. They leaned into it, crying publicly, giving interviews, playing the role of devastated loved ones. They assumed sympathy would shield them. Instead, it spotlighted them. Investigators noticed inconsistencies in how grief was expressed. Emotion came and went at convenient moments. Tears dried too quickly. Anger appeared where sadness should have lived. And when questioned about specific details, times, locations, conversations, the answers didn't match. Again, separation did the damage. When interviewed alone, one partner began minimizing their role. Small phrases slipped out. "I didn't mean for it to happen. They said it would be quick. I didn't think it would go that far." Those aren't denials. They're admissions in disguise. Couples who kill together often believe silence equals loyalty, but silence collapses when survival instincts kick in. The moment one partner realizes they might face life in prison, loyalty becomes negotiable. That's when deals enter the picture. Prosecutors know this. They don't rush to arrest both suspects immediately. They apply selective pressure. They let one partner feel exposed while the other feels protected, even if that protection is an illusion. And eventually, one partner cracks first. In another case, the crime itself was impulsive, but the cover-up was calculated. The couple hadn't planned murder, but once it happened, they decided together to hide it. That decision bound them temporarily, but it also guaranteed their downfall. Because improvisation leaves fingerprints everywhere, evidence was overlooked. Surveillance footage captured movements they forgot about. Neighbors noticed unusual behavior, and when police asked simple questions weeks later, memory failed them. Real memories are messy but consistent. Fabricated ones decay fast. What made this case unravel wasn't forensic brilliance, it was contradiction. Each partner remembered the story differently. One remembered events happening earlier, the other later. One remembered objects being present, the other didn't. Those differences may seem small, but to investigators, they're sirens. By the time arrests were made, both partners were pointing fingers. That's another illusion killer couples cling to, that they'll go down together. They almost never do. When the stakes rise, self-preservation takes over. One partner rewrites history to reduce their responsibility. The other reacts defensively. Accusations replace unity. Love turns transactional. She made me do it. He planned everything. I was scared. I didn't know what would happen. The relationship that once felt unbreakable collapses under fluorescent lights in an interrogation room. And then there's the final illusion, that confession brings relief. It doesn't. What it brings is clarity, for investigators, juries, and families left behind. Confessions often reveal how shallow the bond really was, how quickly devotion dissolved, how easily one life was traded to save another. In the end, these couples didn't outsmart police. They outsmarted themselves. They believed love was armor. It was a liability. They believed planning made them safe. It made them predictable. And they believed silence would protect them. It became the loudest evidence of all. By the time police move from suspicion to certainty, killer couples are already unraveling. The shift is subtle at first. Interviews become longer. Questions repeat with small changes. Detectives stop pushing and start listening. Silence stretches. And in that quiet, the truth begins to leak. What many of these couples never understand is that investigators aren't hunting for a single dramatic confession. They're building pressure, slowly, deliberately, allowing fear to do the heavy lifting. Because fear never affects two people the same way. In one case, the couple tried to regain control once they sensed the investigation tightening. They volunteered information, offered to help, even suggested alternate suspects. But every attempt to redirect attention only deepened suspicion. People who are innocent don't try to manage an investigation, they wait for it to end. Police noticed how often the partners checked each other's reactions. A glance before answering. A pause that lasted just a beat too long. One partner would answer confidently, the other would nod along, as if agreeing to a script. Those behaviors aren't accidental, they're rehearsed, and rehearsals leave patterns. When detectives separated them again, the differences sharpened. One partner leaned into cooperation, answering quickly, offering details, trying to appear transparent. The other became defensive, irritated by repetition, offended by implication. That contrast told investigators everything they needed to know. Cooperation wasn't coming from innocence, it was coming from fear. Soon, evidence entered the room. Not dramatic evidence, not a weapon pulled from a bag, just facts, phone pings, receipts, timestamps, small, undeniable pieces that didn't match the story. When presented calmly, without accusation, they landed harder than any interrogation tactic. That's when the first version of the truth emerged. Not a full confession, just a reframing. I didn't plan it. I didn't think it would happen. I was there, but I didn't do it. Those statements are common. They're an attempt to lower moral weight without fully admitting guilt. But legally, they're devastating. Being present matters. Knowing matters. Failing to stop it matters. In another case, the collapse was faster. One partner had already begun distancing emotionally. The stress of maintaining the lie had worn them down. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, the constant fear of a knock on the door. When police offered a path forward, one that included reduced charges, the decision became simple. Loyalty, lost to survival. The confession came quietly. No tears, no drama, just exhaustion. They described the plan, the moment it went wrong, and the immediate panic afterward. What stood out wasn't cruelty, it was banality. The crime wasn't cinematic, it was messy, confused, and fueled by bad decisions stacked on top of each other. The second partner reacted exactly as expected. Shock, anger, betrayal. They claimed they had been manipulated, that they loved too deeply, that they trusted the wrong person. In court, the relationship that once felt powerful was reduced to blame sharing and damage control. Juries see this pattern again and again. Couples who once presented themselves as united suddenly become strangers. They avoid eye contact. They testify against each other. They remember events selectively. Love, once used as justification, becomes irrelevant. In sentencing, judges often comment on this exact dynamic, that committing violence together doesn't lessen responsibility, it multiplies it. That involving another person in a crime deepens the harm, and that trying to hide behind a relationship shows premeditation, not passion. For families of victims, these cases are uniquely painful. They don't just lose someone, they watch intimacy turned into a weapon. They hear how trust was used to lower defenses, how familiarity created access, and how someone they may have welcomed into their lives helped orchestrate destruction. That pain doesn't fade with convictions. In one courtroom, a family member said something that lingered long after sentencing. They didn't talk about anger or revenge. They talked about disappointment, about how two people chose each other over decency, and how that choice erased someone else entirely. And then there's the aftermath for the couples themselves. Prison doesn't preserve relationships built on crime. Communication fades, appeals fail. One partner moves on emotionally, while the other remains stuck in resentment. In some cases, they stop speaking entirely. In others, they rewrite history privately, each blaming the other for everything. What they once called love becomes a liability they can't escape. Looking back across these cases, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Killer couples believe unity makes them untouchable. It makes them visible. They believe shared guilt creates strength. It creates fracture. They believe silence protects them. It isolates them. And above all, they believe they're smarter than the system designed to unravel human behavior under pressure. They aren't. Police don't need genius criminals to make mistakes. They need time, routine, and human weakness. And when two people are bound together by a secret that big, weakness multiplies. Every glance matters. Every contradiction counts. Every moment alone becomes dangerous. In the end, these cases don't fail because of advanced forensics or brilliant investigators, though those help. They fail because relationships built on lies cannot withstand reality. Love doesn't override fear. Loyalty doesn't defeat self-preservation. And no shared story survives sustained scrutiny. The couples who thought they could outsmart police didn't lose because they weren't careful enough. They lost because they misunderstood something fundamental. Crime isolates. Truth connects. And isolation always collapses inward. Before we end, here's something to think about. If you were in a situation where telling the truth could save you, but destroy someone you love, what would you do? Would loyalty still matter? Or would survival take over? Let us know in the comments. If you found this breakdown compelling, like the video to support this kind of storytelling. Share it with someone who's fascinated by true crime psychology. And subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that prove one thing over and over again. Crime is rarely about intelligence. It's about human nature, and human nature always leaves a trail.